And finally, 4 years after that, there was a moment of, do I leave my permanent, stable job at Luminato to take a chance on this company? Like, worried that I had to make the exact right choices. I had to be perfect each step along the way, or worried that I would miss the opportunity or I would fail at the opportunity.
In this episode of Original Story, we will be interviewing the founder and artistic director of the musical stage company, Mitchell Marcus. Mitchell started the company when he graduated, and since then, he has become a leader in the industry. Mitchell was named Canada's Top 40 Under 40 in 2019, an award for outstanding young achievers in Canadian business. The musical stage company is now the largest charitable musical theatre company in Canada. The nonprofit company has been incubating and producing homegrown Canadian musicals for 17 years. All right, thank you so much, Mitchell Marcus, for doing this interview with us. So we'll go on to our first question now.
My pleasure.
How did you get into the performing arts?
I think I was sort of born performing. All through my childhood, I was the kid who would put on shows for first my family, then eventually all of our neighbors. And I would stage these like elaborate musicals in the basement of our house and invite all of the neighborhood kids, the younger kids, to come and see them. And I staged Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, and they were all these like one-person musicals where I played all the characters and accompanied myself and did all of the harmonies. So I think it was sort of inevitable that I was a very theatrical child, and getting into the performing arts would be in my future. The two major shifts came when I was about 11. I think my parents were tired of these basement shows, and so they got me involved in a bunch of community theater groups. And that was a real game changer as I started to move from guessing how to perform to actually performing with a group of people with real sets and props and costumes and lights. And that transitioned into a professional career as an actor. And then there was a second transition that happened when I was about 21, where I moved from acting into arts management. So I think the waves of my career in performing arts have been different, but that like core desire to be in the performing arts was something that was recognizable at a really young age.
Yeah, so I know like a lot of people start, like everyone wants to be an actor, but then they sort of, they switch off to like another thing, but they're still working in the performing arts. So how did that happen for you?
For me, there was a real light bulb moment. I went to York University to get a fallback plan, which is actually a very strange idea to spend 4 years getting a fallback plan. But I was already acting professionally, and my parents were just encouraging me to have something else to fall back on. So I went to York, and I ended up in a program called Fine Arts Cultural Studies. And I assumed I was there really just to get a BA so that if acting ever fell through, which I was sure it wouldn't, that I would have something else to work on. And as part of that Fine Arts Cultural Studies degree, I ended up in a course called Arts Management. And it wasn't something I ever really thought about very much, but in the first semester, there was a project where you had to write a business plan for a fictional arts organization. And it was one of those kind of light bulb moments in life where I had to do this project and suddenly knew what I was actually meant to do. I knew right away that what I felt was missing in the landscape as an artist was a musical theater company in Toronto. And so I wrote this business plan for this project for what would a musical theater company in Toronto look like that is creating homegrown musicals, that is supporting local talent, so that they don't have to go to Stratford and Shaw or small towns across Ontario to be doing their work.
Curious as well, like how did you sort of start like the musical stage company? Like how did it go from, just a business plan, just an idea, to where it is today?
I think it developed really organically. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but it was, a lot of people, so many people graduate from theater school and they're like, I'm going to start a theater company. And this story is no different than the thousands of theater companies that have been started after university that lasted for 2 years and then fell apart. Because it really functioned that way. I really was not entitled to run a theater company. I was like a nobody out of York, and I just decided I was going to do it. And that's a story that's very common. But I think what made musical stage different were a couple of things. Number one, in the core DNA of the company, of the idea for the company, was something that was absent. So that business plan in second year was a very strong business plan because it spoke to something that was missing, like really, really missing in the market. And so when we started, what set us apart from everybody else who just starts a theater company out of university was that there was suddenly a bunch of really extraordinary actors who wanted to be a part of it. And there were some audience members who really wanted to see it. You know, we did Tick, Tick, Boom as our first show, which was a Jonathan Larson musical, and then an Andrew Lippa musical, and then William Finn, and then, Aarons and Flaherty. And we were doing shows that even though the shows were perhaps not of a great quality from a production values perspective, because we had no money. It was a brand new out of university, let's try to do a show on $20,000. But the artists who were performing in it were exceptional, like as good as they were the people that you see at Stratford or with Mirvish who were willing to do this work because they saw the seed of an idea. And the audience who was attending were made up of people who were passionate about these shows, who would want to fly to New York to see them, and we're so happy to have them here. And so I think that's what really set us apart, that it wasn't just Tarragon Light or Soul Pepper Light or Canadian Stage Light that's really indie and off the radar and not really doing anything different. It actually was different. And everybody recognized that, and they were willing to invest in it in the early days with their time, with their participation, with the belief that it could be something bigger. So that's one thing that I think distinguished it. And I don't know, I think the other thing is we've just really always been good at learning from each experience. Like, there was a long-term vision. It wasn't just, I'm going to do this while I'm not acting. A lot of these out-of-university theater companies fall apart because the person who's started it then gets booked on a big TV show and they didn't really want to be a producer. But this, in its DNA, was meant to be something that could be a major arts institution that was missing.
So Mitchell, what major life-changing decisions have you made? And if you could do it again, would you choose the same thing?
Oh, it's funny. I think there've been a few along the way. One life-changing decision was when I went to York for this fallback plan that I spoke about earlier. I actually started at the Schulich School of Business. And after first year, I had a major kind of meltdown before going into second year where I thought, what am I doing in business? Like, I'm an actor who wants a fallback plan, and I'm in these intense business courses with these people who are dreaming of running the banks in the city, and I want to be in a show. And I made a decision at that point to leave business a week before school started. And I debated, do I move to New York? Do I drop out of school? Do I go to Sheridan? And ended up just changing at York into a fine arts cultural studies program. And the irony of that moment is that's where I discovered that business course on arts management. And I ended up re-enrolling in most of the business courses, but I suddenly knew what the why was at the center. So that was a moment of fear and bravery to go, everybody's expecting me to show up at business school in another 2 weeks, and I know I don't want to be there. Another moment was going, I'm not going to act anymore, that I was offered a full-time job at Luminato. And I thought, this is the moment. If I take this job, and it's how I paid my bills while I started musical stage, which was then called Acting Up. I thought, well, if I do this, I'm not an actor anymore. Am I ready to not do that? And it was, again, kind of trying to trust my gut and make that decision. And by taking that full-time Luminato job and leaving acting to the side, it's really what got the wheels going on musical stage. And finally, 4 years after that, there was a moment of, do I leave my permanent, stable job at Luminato to take a chance on this company? And I made the decision to do so. All three of those together, the decision to leave business school to understand what I should be doing, and to stop being an actor to go to Luminato, and to leave Luminato to start musical stage. I think these were each moments where I just could feel so strongly that something in my life wasn't right, that I wasn't quite on the right path. And even though the path I was on was the safer path and the more stable path, I just knew, like there was just a feeling of anxiety, a pit in my stomach going, I'm missing something, or this isn't the right place for me. And in each case, I chose what was perhaps the riskier path of like leave business school or stop acting, which I've been doing for years, and see what happens, or leave my full-time job for something that barely can scrap a salary together. Watching your language, watching your emotional response to these things, if it's an obligation, you're probably not in the right space. If there's a sense of calm, life's never easy, but if there's a sense of calm, if there's a sense of openness that you're feeling to being able to discover things, that's the right space for you. And so I think that matters more. It matters more than I was always told I should be a doctor, so I'm in medical school, but I don't really love it, but I should be here. I'm sure I'll love it one day. Is a very different feeling than I'm in liberal arts. I don't know where I'm going, but I feel good. Like I'm interested. I'm attentive. I'm listening. All of that noise of shoulds will cloud out your space to be able to actually go, oh, something just caught my attention. That's really interesting. I'm going to pursue that. I think you have to be in your open space to do that. So, yeah, listen to your body, and risk isn't risky. Like, risk is unknown, which is scary, but you already know if the thing you're in isn't working, and taking a different path, making a different choice is actually perhaps the less risky thing to do, because you already know about the thing you're in if it's not the right thing for you.
All right, wonderful. And moving on to the next question. If you could travel back in time to when you were in high school or beginning your career, what advice would you give yourself?
I think if I were speaking to my high school self, it would be to trust that it's all going to happen. I carried a lot of that in high school. I was very ambitious, and I was also very worried that, kind of relates to the last question, like worried that I had to make the exact right choices. I had to be perfect each step along the way, or worried that I would miss the opportunity or I would fail at the opportunity. And I think the thing I just reflecting on the last, 20 something years since high school, it's like everything really just does unfold as it should. It's such an impossible thing to believe at that time, but the world will send you the right things. You will be in the right place at the right time. You will find people who believe in you and see your potential, and you will find your path. Like you're gonna find happiness. You don't actually have to reverse engineer it or manufacture it, within an inch of its life to say, I have to be doing this by the time I'm 20 and I have to do this by the time I'm 24. Actually, for me, the richness came in because in the times that I didn't know, in the times where I thought, I'm actually not sure what happens next. Let me be open to possibilities. Let me explore this direction. And then suddenly something amazing emerges from it. So yeah, I think like worrying less, knowing that you actually do, you've been given all of the tools as a human to thrive, to be a great contributor to this world. It's all there. The world's going to recognize it. It's going to happen in its time. And not to spend less time trying to manufacture it, to make sure it goes in your perfect life plan, and spend more time being curious and more time being open, and more time saying yes to the surprises that emerge around you. Because that's actually when you discover yourself, not when you're sitting with a journal trying to map out what the rest of your life is going to look like.
Thanks for watching. Special thanks to Mitchell Marcus for making the time to do this interview with us and sharing your experiences. Also, a thank you to the channel's editor, Raymond Liu, for putting this together. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you'd like to share your stories, please email me. Cheers!